All right, welcome back. Last time we were working on the card 4, the JSON structure, and we didn't quite finish up all the unit tests. So I wanted to run through the code for the failing unit test. And so let's go take a look at our code and our tests, and then we'll jump into the grade level selection, which I know Caitlin started on. We'll probably end up jumping into his live share. So we can work on his machine and his branch. Okay, so let's start here with our API handler service. And the function we're testing we were testing at the end of the day a couple days ago was the get test. And in particular, we've already written the test for success. So, what you see here is test service next should have been called with the data that was passed through this observable to the promise to the data, and then the data being assigned. Okay. So this is the positive test. What we need to write is the failing test. We need to follow through this catch branch. And one of the patterns that we want to follow here is we do need to kind of protect our console log. And I can tell you right now that I forgot to, where's my, all right, I've got code on another machine. I forgot to take a look at that specific code we need for that case. So we need a helper spec file. Okay, and the helper is going to actually protect our console logs and console debugs. I usually leave console watch alone. There are a couple other consoles in there, but those are the two big ones that I tend to plug into my code once in a while. So in here, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this one spec. Oops. And I do this in the shared because I want the underscore to indicate that this is something unique. Okay. And so the file we're going to create is the helper spec.js. In this case, it's going to be JavaScript. It doesn't need to recompile it. It's a really simple set of tools we're going to build here. Okay. And we might get some error in typing, but I think we should be okay. We're going to create a console debug variable. We're going to create a console log variable. And then what we want to do is we want this to protect anytime a test is run. So if you remember over here, we had these before each, after each, and that kind of stuff that we talked about. But we actually have another one that's called before all. And this is a really good use case for the before all. Okay. So what we're essentially going to do is set up a spy that stubs out. And I've written this a number of different ways, and this is the one that seems to work the best for me. So we're going to take console debug, and we're going to assign it a spy. And it's going to be console debug. And then we're going to stub it. Okay. And then we also need console log to do essentially the same thing. Oops. And then we need a console log and stub. So what happens is if we have a console log somewhere in our code, we forget about it. It's not going to junk up the look and feel of our test suite when it runs. I use console warn if I really need to see a value or something like that in my code. But then the nice part here is we have to do an after each to clean up. And what we're cleaning up are the calls. So if we accidentally called a console log, it's going to track those calls because it's running the before all. Okay, so what we're actually clearing up here is really easy. So it's a console debug dot calls reset, and console log calls reset. This comes from about ballpark about 8 years writing unit tests. I figured out that this pattern works really well for me. Okay, and then the other trick is we had to put this into the right place. And so bear with me 1 second as I figure out where buried in my files it is. I think it's in the Angular JSON. Well, no, it's probably going to be in our Karma config, I would bet. And give me 1 second. Oh, there it is. It's in the, yep, it is in the Karma config. We're going to come down here and somewhere we got our Karma's our runner. Okay, Jasmine is our test suite. And then in the Karma config, right after plugins is where I usually put it. It has an option for files. And we're going to give it an array. And there we go. And then here we're going to say source / app / shared. This is where we get our underscore spec tools. Helper spec.ts. So what this will do is tell it to run this when the tests are run. So this file is going to be opened up, that code executed, and it'll be available for every test. The nice part is we don't have to spy on console log because it's already been spied on. We just have to use this console log spy, which, if everything works really, really well, should come up and work for us perfectly. Doesn't always go that way, but all right, so let's move that back over. There we go. Okay. So failing test. Here comes the fun part. And of course, my other computer's on the wrong screen. Here we go, failing test. And we want to do an init, and we expect get test to handle error. All right. Sounds like a good title. And so first thing we'll do, we've done some of this already. We can use the same data because we have to, we don't have to pass data. We do need that. We do need to spy on the get, but I think that's about all out of there we're going to need initially. Yeah, we could probably use the data. Let's take it anyway, because we have to pass something into it. Doesn't matter if it's used or not. Okay. So the get URL is going to do exactly the same thing we did in the last one. The difference here is going to be when we actually trigger the get URL in our code. Okay. So when, when we trigger the HTTP get. Okay. So what we want to do here is when this fires, we need to trigger an error. Okay, we're still going to return a value, but we're not going to return data. What we're going to return is a from. Okay, from is an RxJS form. And let's go ahead and add it to RxJS. So it got added up here in our imports. And if we look here, from returns an observable. Okay, kind of like the of we did before, but I found from works better when I'm working with errors. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to return a promise rejection. And we're going to give it a message. It has to have a reason for rejection. And we're going to say error code. Okay. So when the HTTP get is triggered by our code, we're creating a promise rejection that we're passing to an observable, becomes an observable that our HTTP get expects. It sees that it's a rejected observable. That's the first value coming back, and it's an error, so it should go right into our catch block, passing error code in. Okay. The other one we have to remember from last time is this is an async, right? Still have to account for that. So we have to do an await service.get test. And yeah, we really didn't need that data. Let's get rid of that. All right. I thought we did. No. Okay. And so all we need to do now is set up our expect. So we should expect the console log to have fired. Right? So we spied on console log. So can we just do, we might be able to do console log here. We might have to use that console log variable to have been called with error code. Okay. It might have changed this. That could be the one big part we have to change. So let's save the file. Always helps to save the file, right? We need to open a terminal. Integrated terminal. We don't need to be here, but let's get up to the source level. We know what above, doesn't matter. But we'll run an ng test and see what happens with our unit tests. And keeping our fingers crossed we didn't break anything, but I'm known for breaking things, so let's see what happens, right? This is so much nicer running this on the Mac. The PC I have for work, hey, it worked. The PC I have for work takes like 30 seconds to spin up. It's got a limiter on the CPU. Yeah, really nice. Every time I run my test. So look at that. We got passing tests. Yay. So we've covered our code. And from my point of view, this JSON structure, we're able to read the JSON structure and we're able to do something with it. Okay. So let's spin it up real quick before we jump into the grade level selection card. I want to see if this kind of gives Caitlin some thoughts on things that we could do with that. Okay, so we're going to go ng serve. Oh, maybe. Not quite sure where I typed that. ng serve. Okay. That'd take about as long as you test to spin that up. I did say last time I want to go, or that I want to go a little bit slower with these to make sure we get thought processes right, that people say things working right. Okay, so it wasn't here that we saw our data, right? What we saw was we got a console. Okay, third, fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth grades, right? So this is our data from the JSON file. So we have this key third grade with an array inside it. And let's take a look. I don't care which one of our arrays. And that array has an object, and that object has a name, question, test ID, that kind of thing, right? But what can we do with this? Okay, what we have at this point in time, it's not the API handler service that we're actually utilizing at this point. It is that code was run through. We called the API service. It was in the home component, I believe. Yeah. So it came back here to data, right? But we didn't do anything with it. We just console logged it out. The tests aren't impacting that because we're not running the tests, we're running the app, right? But let's say we create a data object here, and it's going to be an array. At this point, we'll just say array of any. We're going to make an empty array initially. Okay. So what can we do here? Well, we can do a couple of things. We can just assign it. It's an object with keys. Okay. The problem with an object of keys is we really don't have a way to loop over that yet. So what if we did something really simple? Let's leave the console login for now. And let's say this.data, remember we have to reference it with this, equals object keys of data. So what it should give us is an array of strings, right? With those keys from that object. But that then gives us something we can work with. Okay, so nothing's changed out here. We still get our objects, but what we have now is an array that's on our component that we can then work with. And here's where the cool part comes in. Okay, so if we take a look at our HTML, we have this home works, and it's not real useful for our purposes. So what if we take that out? And let's just create a div. And we're just going to say this is a list of grades in data file. Okay. And we're all familiar with unordered lists, right? We're going to create an LI. Here's where we start to get fancy. Okay. We can get really fancy. So we're going to use a star ng4. This is an Angular attribute. This is something that you don't have in React, I would expect, right? You might have seen it if you played with Vue. And we could do a let. We're going to say let item of data. Now here's one of the weird ones that always bugged me. To reference data down here, I have to use this. when I'm referencing any of the data in my class or functions, modules, whatever you want to call them, I don't need this. Okay. It's an assumption that it's there. So we know these are strings, so we can just use this double squiggly bracket and display item. Okay, double squiggly brackets, one way to reference things. The NG4 with the star is one way to reference things. We're going to see a few others as we go. Okay, so let's save that and see what happens. And the cool part happened back here because now we have all the keys. Okay, so let's show you one other way that we can use this. And in my cleanup, I'm going to do something like this just to make it a little easier to read because I'm going to put a couple of them out here. We can also do two-way data binding. Okay, and two-way data binding occurs something like this. Okay, so a round bracket parenthesis says I want to execute something on the originating class. Square bracket means I want to reference some data point on the originating class. So what goes inside the equals after this, if we did an equals and double quotes, what goes inside there is assumed to be code against this. Okay, it's no longer static strings inside there. In fact, if I want to pass a string, I have to put single quotes around it. Okay. We're not going to do double two-way data bind. It's very rare that you're going to want to do two-way data bind. That was one of the big problems that AngularJS had. Everything was two-way data binded, and things blew up, data bound, and everything blew up because you wound up with thousands and thousands and thousands of data binds. One-way data binding, we could do something like this. We can say click. And in the click, I'm going to execute a function. And we're going to say trigger details. And I'm going to send it item. Okay, so that item is the same reference up there. What I'm telling it is I'm executing this function, which doesn't exist yet. So we're going to create it. And it's going to take in item. It's going to be a string. Now, let's do it this way. Let's call it key, so we don't confuse you. We don't have to send anything back, so it's a void. But here, let's just do a console log of the this.data, so key. And we're getting an error, why implicit any, because the next expression is not of type number. What? Oh, wait. Okay, so this is the data is an array of strings, so you'd have to index it by numbers. What I want is the original data. So let's make a new one up here that we're going to call original data. It's going to be of type any because it's an object, not an array, right? And at this point, we're going to tell it it's this. And then down here, we'll say this dot original data equals data. At that point, we don't need that console log. And instead of this being data here, we're going to make this original data. Which, of course, it's going to say what? Original data does not exist on type home component. Did I spell something wrong? Did you mean? Oh, look at that! I missed an I. Yeah, I can spell. All right, there we go. We saved because something's going to happen. Okay, we no longer have those console logs. Remember, I took that out of the handler. But now these are clickable. Doesn't show they're clickable because I didn't put a CSS in. Okay, but if I click, of course, nothing happens. Okay, because I didn't save that side. Let's save the HTML. That would make it work better, right? They're great. Then I get an array of something. It's an array item. All right, so these were arrays. So let's do this. Say key sub 0. Let's just print the object inside the first object inside the arrays, right? There. Look at that. The test ID. That's the first one. Third, fourth, sixth, all the way on down. Actually, it looks like we did some cool stuff. We have these test IDs that are kind of all over the place and what our test IDs would be. We have different names and things like that. It works. Kind of cool stuff. Okay. Now, we can go further with this. We can do things like We can say our class here is, so we can attach our handlers and that kind of stuff. But we can also do other things, like if you did a square bracket class, this can execute a function and go get the class. Okay. So it's data that would be assigned to be used here. In this case, this is handling the on click for us, right? Cool stuff. Okay. So I'm going to leave that kind of where it is at the moment. I think we're pretty close to done on that one. I just kind of wanted to show that we probably will end up taking this out. This is just to kind of show you how it works. I want folks to be able to look at it and see and realize that the home component SCSS, that's SAS, all you do is add a class to change our pointer if we wanted to. Maybe you change the color to green when it's hovered or something like that. That all can be handled it's standard CSS at that point. The nice part there is when we put the CSS in, it's isolated. And now that I say that, let's show you isolated. Okay. So let's do class equals, what are we going to call this? Item. Let's call it item. Why not? So over here, we're going to create an item. And we're going to say something like pointer, cursor pointer. There we go. And then on hover, here's one of the cool parts of SAS is we can nest, right? Hover, color, green. Right, that should be enough to show us that something changed. And then we can take a look at the actual objects in the DOM. Okay, so we hover now. Notice our pointer change. And our color changes. Okay. It could be really obnoxious to make those bold and that kind of stuff. We don't have to do that. Click still works, right? Let's go take a look at this in the DOM real quick. And we're going to inspect. And let's move that way. Okay, so notice this ng content GTS C17 that gets added in there. Okay. We have the class item. But if you look at how the item was applied out of the SCSS, that attribute, the ng content GTS 17, is a part of the reference to the CSS on that element. That should start to occur to people that this actually means something. Okay, what this means is we've now isolated our components in a way that if I create another component, it's going to have its own GTS whatever set of codes so that we don't end up having CSS bleed over. Okay. And that's important. I can create item on every single one of them as a class, and they can all be different. You don't get that bleed over. Okay. So if you want parent level CSS, that ends up down here in this style CSS down here. This is global to the entire application. So if I did something to item here, every item that has it will get it, even though it has that attribute. Okay. Kind of a cool way of isolating. I like it. All right. So, all right. And we have a GitHub desktop hiding over here that has my changes. We changed the karma config. You can see that. We added the files. We modified that spec. We added the tests. We modified our home component. We're going to leave that in for now. We changed our CSS. We changed our TypeScript, added, fixing that handler function up better. We added 2 new data points on this class, and we added this module as well for the trigger details, which just did the console log, nothing fancy, but I wanted to show that it worked. And we have our helper spec that kind of isolates those things. Okay. Before I do that, let's stop my running terminal. And we probably should, just to be safe. I always forget to do that before I push up. But while that's running, I can come over here and I can say final changes and push to the origin. And now we're finishing our test. Hey, that passed. If my test had failed, I'd have to fix something before I push another one up. Clearly, before I create a pull request, I would want to fix that. All right, so we don't have that running anymore, so close that down. And we'll fix this up. And guys, there's no rush to review these. Okay. And if we get it merged in by next time, that's fine. You know, if we get it tonight, great. I'm not going to worry about it either way. Okay. This is more teaching you guys some things. Okay. And there we go. Our checks or fixes. If I really wanted to get fancy, I'd do a screenshot. I'm not going to worry about a screenshot tonight. We're going to create the pull request. And that should be out there for you guys. I'm going to assign myself to it. And let's assign all 15 of us that are on. Is there anybody here that's not in my queue of names? That just send something on the chat. And we'll make sure you get added. No loud screaming, and the chat number has not incremented from 1. So that's a good sign. Okay. So you should all have gotten an email somewhere along the way that this one needs reviewed. You know, go over to the file changes, take a look at the changes. I always go through the file changes just to make sure I didn't like forget a console log or something, but you just saw me go through the code before I pushed it up. But this is also a combination of things that we've done in the past, like these endpoints. So quick double check on my part. This is me just looking, did I mess up a console log? Because, you know, that console log, yeah, I expect that. That's our error handling at the moment. That'll get replaced. But I know what console logs in here where we were testing stuff. Okay. Pretty standard stuff there. There. Imports, yep. Nothing exciting there. In fact, we can believe we have cleaned that up a bit. Well, yeah, we have those console logs, but that's expected. Data. Data? What did I change on the data? Oh, you guys are working in my branch one. Yeah. Okay. So from my perspective, it looks good. We just have to get the reviews, get it pushed in. Okay, if we got one, we're on our way. Cool. And as I said last time, I love the fact that the very first time we did this, folks were merging code in and this and that. The preference would be that the person who opened the PR would be the one to merge it. Okay, because if something else comes up that you're not aware of, good time to catch that and fix things. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and merge this in. No conflicts. Confirm it. I'm good to go on that one. All right, so no open pull requests at this point in time. That code's in with that. So part of what you'll need to do, Caitlin, when we get there is you'll want to do a git merge of main into your code at some point. Okay, so this will be, let's see, let's come over here and we don't need to, don't need that open. There we go. So we're going to take this JSON structure card. And we have the structure. We're shy a little bit of data, but that's okay. We got another card on data down the road. You know, code review was what we just did. Okay. If we had manual testing or automated testing of the code itself, that's not the unit testing. That's testing the running application. If we had it running anywhere, we could worry about that. Okay. So I should have moved the card to code review at the point that I opened the PR. So let's take a look at this grade level selection one. And the intent here was to create a set of material UI buttons for 3rd through 8th grade high school and adult. And there was some data that needed to be updated, importing that class into a new component that we're going to create, put that component somewhere, so that we can see those buttons just kind of next to each other vertical. At this point, it doesn't matter too much, so we can see the buttons. Okay, they don't have to do anything yet. I have some thoughts on how we're going to get them to do that. We may need to create some new cards and wiring that up. Okay. And Caitlin had taken this one on. So let's, in fact, you might want to add yourself to the card at some point. So let's see. Caitlin, did you want to send me the link to your live share?
I'll drop it in chat.
Yeah.
After that whole walkthrough you've done, I'm kind of embarrassed. You're going to take it back to 1st grade here in a second. But that being said, I want to say to the other people here, like, take this as an opportunity to kind of look at how bad I do here. And, don't be scared to jump in and write some garbage and get some help.
Well, At the same time, the only one that really needs to join is me. Okay. I want to do that so you guys can see what we're doing. And it's not bad code. It's just code you wrote not really understanding the depth of Angular yet. Okay.
I also am not sure that I understood exactly what we wanted. I didn't understand we only wanted 3 buttons, so I got some extra info filled out here. And
Okay. So,
all right, so this export class is basically what I wrote 3 seconds before this meeting. I know it's not going to work. It's basically trash, but it's a placeholder for what I'm trying to do.
okay. Yeah, so let's take that out of there because really we just need to work on the file, and this is the JSON file, so you wouldn't have that in there. Okay. I'm going to take that out. The JSON file, we have exactly what we need here. We have an array of keys and titles, an array of objects with the title and key information. So what we're eventually going to want to have, and I'm wondering if this is me, if the 9th through 12th grade we can
Yeah,
strip down to high school.
that's what I was
So
saying. Is I didn't look at the
okay,
card well enough, and
that's okay.
you wanted 3 buttons and not
That's okay.
15.
Hang on. Oh no, no, we will have 3 buttons later on. This one will have 10, I think. Okay. And college actually might make some sense. Thinking about it. Let's just let's leave that one in, and let's add key adult and title adult. All right, and later on maybe we'll add some other attributes to these, like color or something like that. So maybe maybe we have some weighting of the color or something like that. So we have those initial grades. We have grade levels. Did you create a feature?
Yes.
You did. Grade level selection. Perfect. Okay. So let's take a look at what we have in here. All right. This is where the import occurs. Okay. So if you come up here on line 2, and we do an import of config from it's not giving me the reference on the visuals. So it should be seeing core / constants. Oh, now it's giving me the reference.
Constants
JSON.
config JSON.
There we go.
It took me forever to figure that out because I have a Copilot on, so it overrides
yes.
that.
Got it. All right. So all we need to do here is we need a reference endpoint to what now is config dot grade levels. Okay. So let's say levels, and it's going to be an array of, and if you really want to get fancy, we should type this. We won't initially, and I'll show you how to type it here in a minute. Okay. Now we have this config variable that we can just say config, and this is proper JSON. The grade levels has a hyphen in it. You can't just say dot grade levels right here. Okay. It's offering me that as a session, but that's not going to work. There we go. Very smart. It adjusted. It has to be a string reference inside there as opposed to a dot reference. Okay. We now have levels available that we can display in our HTML. Okay. And let's put a semicolon on there. Now, the other piece we're going to need is, why the spec turned red? That was weird.
This is where I try to import it.
Oh, okay. Well, and you're close because the JSON files, you have to name them. It doesn't have a preset internal name that's exported. So it would be something like config if you wanted to import that here. Okay. So the reason we have the squiggle brackets around here for grade level selection component is that's exported from the file we're referencing. So if you look in here, there's an export of that class. Okay. So you don't need the squiggles if you have to actually name it. Okay. So HTML. We need to put something in there, and then we need to put this someplace. So one of the things I look at is I really don't like the app stuff before it, but we can leave that in for now. Personally, I think it looks better if you just had grade level selection instead of app grade level. I don't think it matters too much either way from in perspective of learning Angular. So we'll leave it in. The other piece you're going to need is, you've done this before, we have the map slide toggle, right? We need the map button, right? My guess is going to be that it's map button module. And it didn't auto config for me. So, okay, so we'll do a from at Angular / material / button. Look at that. Hey. Okay. I try and group things. I try and keep them alphabetical so they get easy to find. So then we just have to find our slide toggle. And that's one of our internal ones. So we need to put a button in here so that it imports it. We can't use the material button until we import the material button, right? So let's go take a quick look at the Angular material button so we know what we're working with. So maybe I can spell Angular. We'll just start there. Easy enough. Components is a good place to go, right? Button, good place to go. Got lots of buttons. I don't know which color scheme we're using, and I guess I'm also, I am running this normal. Okay, so this is normal coloring. Okay, the really cool part is you can come over here and you can view the code behind it. We want something like our primary button. I don't think it has to be much more than that. Okay, so let's go in and let's view our code real quick to see what we have. So if you look at what we have here, we have basic, raised, stroked, flat, icon. There's delete some bookmarks and menus and things like that. So basic, we probably want raised, right? Could have flat. I tend to be a fan of flat, but let's go with raised for now. Okay, so let's go up here and we'll look at raised. We want the raised primary. So there's basic, there's raised primary. Cool, let's go with that. All right, so we're going to come over here and we're going to go back to, let's close that out. We don't need the module. We don't need the spec file. We need that open, but we also want this open. And since I can't do anything with the terminal, I'm going to close that down. And I'm just going to paste this in for now. And to give you guys a little more screen space, we don't need to see all that. I can remember where all those come from. So I'm going to give you one more piece here. Now we could put the NG4 on the button and just make it go across, okay? The other piece you can do is they have what's called an NG container. And an NG container is simply an Angular container that the actual container never displays. It's something that can loop over other objects, okay? It is possible we're going to want a wrapper on these buttons. I almost guarantee we are at some point. So let's make a div. And we'll call it class equals level wrapper. We'll put that around everything. Wow. I'm not getting any help on my code. All right. I forget when you're remote, it's a lot different. So we're going to use this ng container for our ng4. Let level of levels. And this is a standard ng4 or standard for of, right? You can use a let of in your JavaScript. So it's functioning the same way. And we want to indent that, not back it up. We have to close our ng container. Sometimes it's helping and sometimes it's not. All right, so we need the button, map raise button to keep things nice and pretty. I'll do this. Okay, but in here we can now use level. And we have a level key and a level dot title, right? But we needed the inside our squiggle brackets. Like that. Okay. It should do something. Do you have it running up on your machine?
I do not.
ng serve. Okay, you don't need to do an ng serve, but serve open, but an ng serve. And when you have that, it says your localhost 4200 port is shared.
I'm just now running it, so it's
Okay.
failed to compile.
Failed to
Maximum
combine?
call stack exceeded.
Really? Well, that's cool or not.
Yeah, I'm sure I got some garbage in there somewhere.
Hmm. All right. So what else might you have worked with that could be causing that?
All right, I will pull up my GitHub here. Let's see. So that's all the work you just did.
Oh, I see one error, but that would have caused a call stack problem. Well, let's do this. Push your code up on the branch. I'll pull the branch down locally here. We'll run a test here. I'm going to move the workspace off where it's shared. Keep your live share running. Just push your branch up. And okay. And then I will. This is which one? HTTAT6. I don't see 6, so let me do a fetch origin. There it is. So let's see. Yeah. So we'll open that in VS Code. So it'll open a new VS Code for me, and I've got the latest branch. You pushed that code up already?
I published it. I don't need to create a PR, do I?
You do not need to create a PR. No, I just need access to the branch. It shows me right now I'm on branch 6. All right, so let me do an ng serve here and see what happens. And so I get the same call stack here, then we can track it down. Sure, let's use a different port. I have 4200 running. Oh, it's probably running because of it. Wow. That's cool.
And I fail magnificently.
Yeah, that's impressive. Huh.
Probably just some stuff I hadn't had time to clean back up yet.
Well, let's do this then. Let's do it this way. Let's look at the history on this one. You've only pushed up on this one twice?
I think this was the initial publish for it. I just hadn't got that far with it.
Oh, okay, so that's the merge. This is the initial. So what we can do then is with this history, we can see what all you've changed. Okay. Right. What all we've changed, because I've been working on it too. So we added the grade level component. Wait. Okay, so that should be in the declaration. It probably shouldn't be in the imports. Let's change that real quick on mine. I didn't notice that was there, so let's take that. Oh, come on. Out. Now let's do another. It's attempting to build. Okay, good. Now we got an error. Appears in imports, but is not stand. Oh, I did it backwards. It needs to be in the declarations. It does not need to be in the imports. Modules should be in the imports. There we go. So fix that one on your side. I can abandon these changes. Okay. So I'm going to close that out and let's see, come back over here and it's going to do all this. I'm going to abort that, discard that change. And I'm going to close that browser out. So now I'm back to the shared version, the live shared version. And let's go double check your app module. Yep. So we need the components in the components, and we need the modules in with the modules. There we go. So fix that. And now just from an alphabetical standpoint, we have O, E, G. Yeah, we're not really well alphabetized. All right. I'm a stickler for that. The problem becomes like this list of material components is going to be like 40 long by the time all said and done. Okay. So keep it down to a minimum there. So in the live share, okay. Doesn't look like it's up and running yet. Were you able to do an ng serve on your side?
Yeah, it compiled successfully like 6 times. Let's try it again.
Okay.
Did some weird stuff.
And
I
is
thought
it
you
on
were-
is it
you were
on
doing
4200 for sure?
Not yet. I just
Okay.
checked 4200. It's generating now.
Okay. This
There
is
it
the
is.
fun part. Okay, so it ran. I do a stop and a refresh over here. It probably is going to go a little slow on my side. Spectre up. I always want to do that. There we go. Wow, not much in there yet on my side.
Yay, live share.
Well, what bothers me is it was there already. So I'm wondering if we've got a proper connection to the live share. I do have the local code, so let's do that for now. Let me pull the local branch. I can refix that one part. And yeah, that was in the, and then I can respin it up from my side and we can take a look at what's going on. Okay. So I had to fix that module, which took out. Now I'll just do an ng serve. So I want to see the buttons, right? Oh. Pops up your right folder. It's already in, this is in use because of, yeah, that's fine. It's in use because of the live share. Toggle me. Oh, that's the original toggle button. Oh, and it's
Dark mode.
yeah, dark mode. But we didn't get any buttons. Well, why didn't we get any buttons? I know why we didn't get any buttons. You know why? We have a component. We've never used it anywhere. Right? So our component is app grade level selection. And I'm going to do it in this one. Caitlin, you can mimic me on your side if you want. So let's put this into the home HTML. We're going to get rid of this homeworks. We're going to say like that. Which now we should see a big change there. Not much padding between those, right? So let's go back kind of quickly here and I'll pull this down so we can see it change as we do it. We'll come in and if you want to just mimic this, Caitlin, you can get these pieces. So here we have a button. We don't have a class on it. So we're going to say class equals grade level button. And then in the CSS, SCSS, I got the wrong file. SCSS, there we go. And we'll say not first of type. And we'll say margin left 25 down. There we go. Now the not first type said, hey, the type is a button, right? So on all of them except for the first one, let's do a left margin. The first one you don't want a left margin because it's in the right place, right? I might have it open two places, I don't know. There we go. So Caitlin, if you mirror that, you've got essentially everything you need to make those buttons.
All right.
Okay. What we'll eventually want is a click function. So, and oh, that's not indented right, but we're eventually going to want to click on this. So we would come down here and we'll just say click equals something like select grade level, and we pass it the level dot key. And for right now, we can console log that. My guess is we'll want a service, which is just a class up and running that can kind of hold data. We'll want a service to hold what grade was selected, what type of test they selected. Then we can narrow down which test to provide them when they say start. Make sense?
A little, yeah.
Okay. You guys have heard Caitlin and I chat. What kind of questions do you have here? Now, we haven't written any tests, or let's be honest, there isn't much to test here. There's no functions on this. A quick visual test tells us it worked, right? Questions, comments? Did I lose everybody completely? Do you at least have, does it make sense yet?
Like, it's okay if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Not yet. Yeah. I'm going to start picking on people here.
I definitely need to look through the docs a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to get like a better idea.
Absolutely. The docs are insanely helpful. I just saw a file that's not saved. Let's save that. Oh, and that's going to break it because I don't have the function. Not going to worry about that yet. Let's do that. So let's look at Angular. And there's a whole lot here. And there's a whole lot of good stuff here. Okay. You can jump into the learn more here. You know, you go and look at the docs. What is it? Getting started with it, learn, set up your environment. Well, we've done most of this, right? We're into, you know, their hello world is a tour of heroes, and it's actually pretty good. Okay. They talk about the different types of things that we can create, directives. We haven't gotten into directives yet. They can get a little hairy now and then. We will plug at least one in, I guarantee that. Okay. I haven't written the card on that because we'll add an Easter egg to the application. That's one we'll bring over. It's one I found. It works really well. And it's easy to plug into like the login or something like that, something that's always on the screen. Components, we talked about one-way data binding. You know, we can do two-way data binding. It's going to be really rare that we do that. I'm not thinking of anywhere we might need that at this point. You know, they talk about formatting data with pipes. We can do that. And there are things you can do with like date formats and things like that that are really kind of cool to do with pipes. If you've done any type of command line stuff, you've probably seen pipes. It's where you take a piece of data and you run it through another function. Okay, so if you got a date time thing and you wanted to have a particular format, you can use a pipe to convert that as well. Okay. But if you go straight to the tour of heroes, this walks through creating a project, a hero editor, displaying a list. We just talked about displaying a list, right? Twice. Feature components, services, navigation, getting data from a server. We've just started to touch on some of these. Okay. We're getting there. But this is just tremendously useful documentation. And I'm in light mode. There. Oh, no, that's in dark mode. Okay, so I do have it. I do have it turned off. Wow. Okay, what I do like is their documentation really is good. After you complete the tutorial, here's what it's going to look like. We can open that up and see. Here's their tour of heroes running on Stack Blitz. I would never run on Stack Blitz, but that's, you know, their choice. It does take a while in Stack Blitz to spin this stuff up. So while it's doing that, you could download the whole thing. You know, they give an idea of what they want. They want a dashboard, a list of heroes, who are the top heroes. Yeah. I love the list of heroes personally. It's a great idea. And then how's it all going to come together? You know, the dashboard gives you the top heroes. You can click and get detail. You can adjust things in your detail. You go straight to the heroes, to your main list of heroes. Again, you can access the detail. I mean, this is pretty awesome documentation to think about it. So see if it's up and running. It is up and running, and it is in dark. Nope, it's in normal. Good. So, you know, you can see it's working. See what it does. Save. Oh, we didn't like that, did it? Updated hero 14. Okay, so we go back to our dashboard. Look, it's not Bob now. There's 14, not Bob. Add a new one. Not good at hero names myself, you know, but adding something on there. Just see that it works. We can take that out. We can take that out. Okay, so you can see it's running. You can see the code behind it running. You can, you know, if you walk through this, they literally are going to take you through and build this. Okay, so lots of cool things to learn about. So what have we learned at this point? We've gone through, and oh, that's the wrong place to look at it. About in the code. We've now gone through and let's see, we talked about the app module a little bit. Okay. App module has been built because there were some early concerns, early things that the Angular team wanted to do, and there were more pressing demands on how to do it. As of Angular 14 and 15, we really don't need the app module anymore. It's still pretty prevalent, as you can see, in most of the designs and setups. There is a way to reference all those needs in the header of the components themselves. Okay, but we import modules. The modules are basically a library. Okay, and that library gives us access to that base code, those base components. So as you saw, we brought in the map button module, which let us use the tagged map button, right? And all of its functionality. But as we add our components, they're not built as library components. They're built as our application components. So we need to declare those so that we can use them. Okay. We have an app component, which really doesn't have a lot on it. What it does have is the HTML that gives us, number one, the router outlet. That's our base navigation. Okay. The slide toggle was added in. We'll probably take that off at some point, just to prove the material was working. Okay. In fact, Caitlin, if you want to pull that out in your current branch, that's fine. Okay. I think last time or somewhere in there, we talked about the routing module. We don't have much of a route yet. Okay. We have, and we're going to be on the homepage probably for a little while. But we talked about using that redirect with the path match to handle somebody coming to just the URL without the extension on it. Okay. But you should be noticing patterns here. You know, you've got imports, you're exporting something. You see here, this is setting up an ng module. When we looked at the app module, one of the things that's brought in is the app routing module, so that the app routing module can be used, right? We brought in the app component, right? That app component is the one in its HTML that references the router outlet, which gives that pathing, which takes us to the home component. So when we look at our home component, we're setting up a home component class. It's a type component. Each of these types has its own definitions. So our definition up here is telling us what the selector is. What's it look like inside brackets? Okay. And if our bracket had attributes, which we might have at some point, which we don't have much of yet, we can do imports and export, or imports and output, inputs and outputs, sorry, that are, the input would be attribute, right? So if we build a component with custom attributes, we can then bring in those values. And then an output would be something like we emit data out. Doubt we're going to go quite to that level, at least early on. Okay, so not something to stress about, but we have a way to access those. Okay, this is a class, so it'll have a constructor, just like you would normally see in a class. Okay, we saw that the home component brings it in the header and the app grade level. So we have a header, and the header has a whole lot in it. Okay, but the grade level has a little more. We brought in that config JSON. We brought in data. We looped over that data to create a display. Okay, what we're eventually going to have is it's going to report a click event someplace. So we have a selected grade. You know, we may even stash that data here so that we can disable the other buttons, or maybe we just disable that one button or change its color or style or something like that based on it being selected, right? Give them a visual cue that that one's been selected. You know, the nice part to me, one of the complaints, early complaints about React, and people got over it very quickly. React is a tremendous library. But one of the complaints you often hear, people that still complain about it, is the separation concerns. Well, you can see here our separation concerns is pretty stable, right? You have your TypeScript, which is your JavaScript, that's your base class. You have your styling, your SCSS in this case, we're using Sass, could use regular CSS. We have our HTML. They're all completely separate. It's not all bound into one. Okay. To me, it's a lot cleaner. A lot easier to read through in many cases. In my mind, it's not this one's better or this one's worse. They each have scenarios they're better at. You know, if I need super fast and processing a ton of data, React is my go-to. Okay, if I want to build a native application, like React Native, if I want to build a mobile, React Native is by far a better tool than using something like Ionic with Angular. Okay. For larger teams, for teams really of any size that are going to be working in the same code base, I've got 4 teams working on one application right now. Angular is much easier. Your chances of working in the same file are significantly smaller. So you don't end up with nearly as many merge conflicts. Those things come up all the time. And so now I see I've got the chat is starting to open up. So let's see what we got. Okay, still translating TypeScript to JavaScript. I get that. That takes a little while. It grows on you very quickly. Okay, what you need to remember though is this is at its base, TypeScript is still JavaScript. Okay, TypeScript is a superset. So I could have done levels 2 equals config. That's still valid. I didn't type it. You don't have to type it. I tend to prefer to type it because it solves a lot of problems really quick. So if I try to do an assignment later on, and you know, if let's say I said levels 2 is of type string, this is going to complain right away because config is not a string. It's an object, right? You know how many errors that solves? Spelling mistakes helps a lot with spelling mistakes, right? We all make them. What I've found in using TypeScript is one that absolutely worth getting used to. Probably 9 out of 10 errors I catch before I ever even try and compile the code because of TypeScript. That's tremendous. Okay. Unit testing probably knocks out 50% of that remaining chunk. Now you're down to like 5% that gets through. That's manageable, right? You've reduced it to 1 in 20. Okay. Okay, so makes a little sense when you break down something small like this. Get it? Yep. Trying to extrapolate and scale to other stuff. All right. Laura, getting overwhelmed is fine. I get that. Okay. This is a project that's going to go to scale. Right now, we have myself and Catalan that have jumped in on working on picking up cards and working on code. My hope is that each of you at some point will pick up some of this code and try something. Okay. We're going to see this grow and get bigger and change over time. I'm not trying to lose anybody. In fact, I'm trying to slow down and go through these concepts in a little more depth for you so that we don't lose. We are recording these again so that you can go back through these as many times as you want. If there's some particular topic that you struggled with, reach out. Number one, go back, take a look, take a review if you can find it in the videos. I got the chapter markings on the video, so you can go into the comments and see what we talked about. I'm trying to keep the card numbers on there too when we work on particular cards. And if that fails, reach out to me. You know, there's nothing wrong with putting something on my calendar and we get together and chat for a while and make sure you get those concepts that you're struggling with. Okay. Caitlin got stumped so far back. Yep. Dig through, build something together. Yes, absolutely. Okay. For some people, jumping in is absolutely the way to do it. For other folks, looking at documentation is the way to do it. For other folks, watching people do it is the way. You got to work with what you're comfortable with. Okay. I'm not trying to push anybody into anything. At the same time, if you are struggling, let's work on it. Let's find a better resolution. Okay. Reach out to me, please. Does that help? Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds good. I mean,
okay. Because you're learning a lot here. You're learning TypeScript and Angular and a complete application from the ground up. You know, the intent here is for this to be a functional working application. This isn't just a playground at this point. This is something that hopefully will be usable. Okay. Caitlin, I know you played with logos, and I'm not adverse to throwing a logo into here. Nobody's even touched that. If somebody wants to come up with some ideas on banner logos versus square logos versus, you all know, that fav icon kind of stuff, why don't we get you guys to put a couple of ideas together, and maybe we can talk about that in the next session or session after and see which ones we like and come up with a solution on that. I mean, as you can see, we're just barely picking a color scheme. We got so far white and purple. And yeah, what did I break? I broke something. Actually, I don't even think it's running at the moment. I closed my terminal down, so it should not be running on that machine. But white and purple. Wow, that was weird. I mean, I'm not sure that's the best color scheme. At the very least, let's reduce the white.
That was actually my main goal, is I dark mode everything.
Oh, yes, I do too. You know, and I don't know if we need to be mobile ready, but maybe that's something we need to think about too. I don't know. I mean, these are all questions we still have to answer. There's a lot of questions. Yes, awesome, Laura. So yeah, if you guys don't know what I'm referencing, I threw a post out the other day just to kind of get an idea of what 100 Devs has been doing on logo ideas and this and that. And I got bombarded by about 50 designers willing to take my money and help. And it's not on this project. It's on another project that I'm working on. And I haven't even started to tell you guys that until I stop recording. I'm not telling you guys about that. But I already have an artist I've worked with for years. And my only question there at the point in time that I put that post up was, wasn't 100% sure he was going to take on that work because it's not the kind of work I've typically asked him to do. But he agreed to do it, and he agreed to do it in my price range, which is really cool because my price range is really small. Yeah, Cindy, I get that on the target audience liking mobile. But how many of them actually take a test on a mobile? I don't know. Yeah, lots of kids do their homework on laptops. My son has a Chromebook at school that he was out for like 4 days at one point for a conference with me, and they sent his Chromebook with him so he could keep up on the schoolwork. I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know. We'll have those discussions. Okay, we're not far enough in to really stress about most of that yet. A lot of these are areas you guys have gotten fairly good at. So tablet usage is huge too, but as you can see now, I've got a 1980 screen, so coming into tablet sizes, we're not even a concern yet. Okay. Yeah, we'll get there on it. I'm not stressed on that. As long as you learn something. Okay. I'm not saying you need to dig into TypeScript in depth. I'm not saying you need to dig into Angular even in depth. Learn something. One of the ones we didn't talk about, Kayla, maybe we can address that, is how to add types to that data that's coming in. Right now, I'm still connected to you, so I hope you've updated a few things in there.
I have not.
Okay. This I'll help you clean that up after we stop if you got a few seconds. And Caitlin, can you repost the attendance? What we have is any here, but we know what those grade levels are. They're a typing, they're a title and key, right? So this could end up being something like title, spring, key, spring. And why is that glitching on the title? Member title implicitly has an any. That's weird. Look at its key and title. That's really strange. But the preference would be, this is one way of doing it. I typically don't put them directly in there. What you do is you create and I think we have one in there already, but we don't. Oh, we did. Maybe we did on my branch.
Probably.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that any for right now. I'll help you clean this up once we stop the record. Any other quick questions? Because I do want to help Caitlin clean this up, and I know my family will be home with dinner for too long. Comments, concerns? Okay, so next time we'll go through what was done to fix up this card. Let's see, let's go back to here. Okay, and we should have 6 merged in by then, assuming Caitlin works on it a little bit in the next day or two. And I'll help him with that. The next big one is to work on the build pipeline. Okay. The display select assistance, I think, might even go before the banner. If we have a couple of ideas on logos and stuff, maybe we can chat about that as well. So whether we work on the header banner, whether we work on the select display assistance, the grade level should already be there. So these two should be fairly similar in process. It's just a shorter list. It's crawl, walk, run, right? But that'll have to be added to our config so that we can loop through it and we have the keys that we can pass. I'm thinking we need another card, and maybe I'll create that in between for adding that to a service so we can store that data somewhere that's not in those individual components. Okay. Oh, there's the image logo. Let's bring that one up here into the backlog, so we know to catch that in the next time or two. I'll move that into the backlog too. We have display, select grade. What were we talking about? Oh, grade level test. So displaying a test. All right. So let's see if we can let's put that in here to create a test start page. We don't have to actually start a test. What I want to see is, can we click navigate to another page, be able to pull that data on the grade level selection and the assistance level, so we can display that there. So we can just show that we've gotten to that point. Does that make sense?